My best friend, Mark, sent me a text around 11 p.m. that made my stomach drop. "Hey man, I just saw Jessica at the Velvet Room and she ain't with any girls. You might want to come down here." My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stared at my phone, trying to process what I had just read. Maybe he was mistaken. Maybe he saw someone else. Jessica couldn't be cheating on me. Not after everything we had built together. But I had to know the truth. I threw on my jacket, grabbed my keys, and drove like a mad ant to the Velvet Room, a high-end lounge downtown. As I pulled into the parking lot, I spotted Jessica's car immediately. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Taking a deep breath, I walked inside, my eyes scanning the dimly lit lounge. And that's when I saw her. Jessica was sitting in a booth near the back, laughing, flipping her hair, and running her hand up a man's arm. A man who was definitely not me. My entire body went numb. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and crushed my heart with their bare hands. I moved closer, trying to get a better look at the man she was with. He was younger, maybe mid-30s, tall, well-dressed, with a cocky grin that made me want to put my fist through his face. Jessica leaned in, whispering something in his ear, and then, right in front of everyone, she kissed him. The woman I had loved, the woman I had devoted nearly 2 decades of my life to, was sitting there, shoving her tongue down another man's throat like I didn't even exist. I saw red. My fists clenched, my breathing turned shallow, and for a moment I wanted to walk over there and smash the guy's face against the table. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone, raised it, and started recording. If she was going to betray me, she wasn't going to get away with it. At that moment, Jessica pulled away from the kiss, giggling like a love-struck teenager. And then she looked up. Our eyes met. Her entire body went rigid. The color drained from her face. For a moment, she looked like she had seen a ghost. And then, just as quickly, the fear in her eyes disappeared and she smirked. She smirked. Like she wasn't caught. Like she wasn't ashamed. Like I was the fool for believing in her. I took a slow step forward, shoving my phone back into my pocket. My voice was eerily calm when I spoke. "Having a good time, Jessica?" She blinked once. Then, without hesitation, she did the unthinkable. She laughed. A cold, dismissive, heartless laugh. "Oh, please, Daniel," she said, rolling her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic." Dramatic? I had just caught my wife of 18 years making out with another man in public, and she was acting like I was some kind of overreacting idiot. I clenched my jaw, my nails digging into my palms. The man sitting next to her, this smug, arrogant piece of trash, just leaned back in the booth, stretching his arms behind his head. "You must be the husband," he said, smirking. "Jessica told me you'd be a little emotional." Emotional? I almost lost it right there. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I looked back at Jessica, waiting for some kind of explanation. Something. Anything. She just sighed, rolling her eyes again. "Daniel, let's not make a scene. We were going to talk about this anyway." My blood turned to ice. "Talk about what?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Jessica casually picked up her martini, taking a slow sip before answering. "About my new lifestyle, of course," she said, licking her lips. "I didn't think you'd find out this way, but honestly, I'm kind of glad. Saves me the trouble of explaining." She reached across the table, taking the other man's hand in hers. "This is Ryan," she said with a smug smile. "We've been seeing each other for a few months now, and I've decided I don't want to hide it anymore." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from beneath me. A few months? My wife had been lying to me for months, sneaking around, betraying me, humiliating me behind my back. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat, my entire body shaking. "You're joking," I said. "Please, Jessica. Tell me this is some kind of sick joke." She just sighed, looking at me like I was a clueless child. "Oh, Daniel," she said, shaking her head. "You're so old-fashioned. You act like marriage is some kind of prison. I've moved on, okay? I love Ryan. And you need to accept that. Accept it." She expected me to accept that she had been sleeping with another man behind my back for months? I looked at Ryan, my fists clenching at my sides. He was still smirking. Like he had won. Like he had taken everything from me. And that's when I knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. For a long moment, I just stood there. I could hear the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations, the upbeat music playing in the background, but it all felt distant. Like I had been shoved underwater, drowning in the weight of what I had just heard. Jessica sat across from me, calm as ever, twirling a lock of her blonde hair between her fingers like we weren't in the middle of a life-shattering betrayal. Ryan, the smug piece of garbage she had been screwing behind my back, looked at me like I was some kind of pathetic joke. I felt my fingers twitch. I wanted to wreck that smirk right off his face. But not yet. I took a slow breath, keeping my voice steady. You expect me to just accept this? Jessica rolled her eyes. Daniel, let's be real. Our marriage has been dead for years. I just didn't feel like breaking the news to you because, well, she smirked. You're not exactly great at handling things, are you? My vision blurred with rage. Dead for years? That was news to me. I had been working my ass off to provide for our family, making sure she had everything she needed, and she had the audacity to sit there and act like I was the problem? I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth would shatter. You could have talked to me, I said, my voice barely above a growl. You could have ended things like an adult instead of it. Oh, please. She scoffed. You would have begged. Cried. Guilt tripped me. I didn't feel like dealing with that. I stared at her speechless. This wasn't the woman I had married. No, this was a stranger. I let out a slow exhale, my hands shaking at my sides. So what now? I asked. You just expect me to move out? Hand you the house? Watch you play house with this guy like I never existed. Ryan, the arrogant bastard, chuckled. That would be the mature thing to do. Something inside me snapped. I lunged. Before I even knew what I was doing, I grabbed Ryan by the collar and slammed him against the booth. His smirk vanished in an instant, replaced with wide-eyed panic. Jessica let out a startled scream. Daniel, what the hell? I leaned in, my face inches from Ryan's. You think you can just waltz in and take my wife, my life, and I'm just supposed to stand here and take it? My grip tightened. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't beat you into the ground right now. Ryan gulped, suddenly not so cocky anymore. His hands trembled against my arms, but he didn't dare fight back. He knew I had years of anger, frustration, and betrayal bottled up inside me, and I was a split second away from unleashing all of it. Then I felt nails dig into my arm. Jessica clawed at me, trying to pry me off him. Daniel, let him go. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself? She was the one screwing another man behind my back, and I was the one embarrassing myself? My knuckles turned white, but after a moment I let go, not because I wanted to, but because I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. Ryan slumped back against the booth, gasping for breath. Jessica hovered over him like he was some kind of fragile victim, rubbing his shoulder, whispering reassurances in his ear. And then she turned back to me with pure venom in her eyes. You're insane, she spat. This is exactly why I didn't tell you sooner. You're a controlling, jealous little man who can't handle reality. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the most ridiculous, manipulative, gaslighting thing I had ever heard. Reality? I repeated, shaking my head. Jessica, reality is that you're a liar, a cheat, and a heartless bee. She threw her drink in my face. Cold alcohol splashed across my skin, dripping from my chin onto my shirt. The entire bar went dead silent. I wiped my face with my sleeve, letting out a slow breath as I stared her down. Jessica smirked. Now you look as pathetic as you feel. And that was it. That was the moment I knew I was done. I straightened, my face unreadable. You want to humiliate me? Fine. But don't think for a second that you're walking away from this clean. Jessica raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward her. The entire conversation, the confession, the betrayal, the smug admissions, it had all been recorded. Jessica's face paled. Ryan sat up straighter, his jaw tightening. You son of a... I cut him off with a smirk of my own. Oops. Did I forget to mention? Everything you just said is evidence. Divorce court is gonna love this. Jessica lost it. She reached for my phone, but I stepped back. Nice try, I said, shoving it into my pocket. But I'm done being the fool. She was seething now, fists clenched at her sides, but I didn't care. Because for the first time that night, I was the one in control. I turned on my heel and walked out of the bar, leaving them both sitting there, stewing in their own mess. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I had a plan. And they were going to pay. I walked out of that bar with my head high, but inside I was a storm ready to tear everything apart. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it was going to break my ribs. Every muscle in my body was tight, my hands still shaking from the urge to put Ryan in the hospital. Jessica thought she had one. She thought I was just going to disappear like some loser she could walk all over. No. She had underestimated me. I got into my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The memory of her smug face, the way she looked at me like I was some pathetic joke, kept replaying in my mind. She was going to regret this. Ryan, too. But I wasn't going to lose control like she wanted me to. No, that would be too easy. Jessica wanted to paint me as some unstable, jealous husband. I was going to be smarter. I pulled out my phone again, looking at the recorded conversation. It was crystal clear, Jessica outright admitting to the affair, Ryan laughing like the cocky bastard he was. Perfect. I hit send, backing up the file to multiple cloud storages. Then I sent a copy to my lawyer. Yeah, I should have done this sooner, but I had been too blinded by my emotions. Too caught up in the shock and betrayal. Not anymore. I wasn't just going to fight back, I was going to destroy her. By the time I got home, the house felt different. Colder. Emptier. Not because she wasn't there, no, Jessica was still out, probably laughing with Ryan about how she had thrown her drink in my face. But because I finally saw it for what it was. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene, the place where my marriage had died. I walked straight to her bedroom, not even bothering to turn on the lights. I stood there for a moment, taking in the scent of her perfume, the neatly made bed, our bed, the same one she had probably rolled out of before going to meet him. Disgust filled my throat. I needed to get out of here. But not before setting things in motion. I grabbed a duffel bag and started packing. Not too much, I didn't want Jessica to know I was leaving just yet. Just the essentials, enough to keep me going for the next few weeks. Because when I walked out of this house for good, I wanted to make sure she was the one left with nothing. 1 a.m. Jessica still wasn't home. I sat in the living room scrolling through bank statements on my laptop. And that's when I found it. The missing money. I wasn't stupid, I had always kept an eye on our finances. But lately, I had been too busy to check, too trusting to even think she'd do something like this. She had been draining our joint account. Thousands of dollars gone. Transferred to an account under a name I didn't recognize, but I had a pretty good idea who it belonged to. Ryan. That was it. I had been angry before. I had been betrayed. But this? This was war. I copied everything, screenshots, transaction logs, even emails she had sent from our shared account. I forwarded it all to my lawyer with one simple message. Find a way to bury her. 2:30 a.m. The door finally creaked open. I stayed on the couch, arms crossed, watching as Jessica stumbled in. Drunk. Of course. She didn't even notice me at first. She was too busy kicking off her heels, mumbling to herself as she fumbled with her purse. Then she looked up and nearly jumped out of her skin. Jesus, Daniel? What the hell? Sitting in the dark like some freak. I didn't answer. Just watched her. Her makeup was smudged, her hair messy. Lipstick smeared just slightly at the corner of her mouth. I felt sick. She didn't even bother hiding it anymore. Jessica sighed, rolling her eyes. Oh, what now? Are we doing the dramatic silent treatment thing? I leaned forward. How much money did you steal? That wiped the smug look right off her face. She blinked. What? I tilted my head. Don't play dumb, Jessica. I checked our accounts. You've been funneling money out for months. What, funding your little boyfriend's lifestyle? She scoffed, tossing her purse onto the couch. You're being ridiculous. Try again. Her eyes flickered just for a second, but I caught it. That was the moment she realized she was caught. But Jessica was a liar. A damn good one. And instead of panicking, she did what she always did, she tried to gaslight her way out of it. You're paranoid, Daniel. She folded her arms, leaning against the wall. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with control, I wouldn't have needed to keep things from you. I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that comes from something funny. The kind that comes when you realize the person you spent years loving is pure poison. I stood up, towering over her. Let me be very clear, Jessica. I'm filing for divorce. And when I do, I'm taking everything. Her expression barely flickered. You can't. I smirked. I can. And I will. The recording? Sent it to my lawyer. The bank statements? Sent those too. Oh, and let's not forget the little detail of you cheating. Judges love that. For the first time all night, she looked nervous. Good. She deserved to be. Jessica straightened, her face hardening. You think you can just ruin my life? I took a step closer, lowering my voice. No, Jessica. You ruined it yourself. She didn't respond. Just stood there, gripping the edge of the couch, her nails digging into the fabric. I turned away, heading toward the door. I was done. But before I left, I glanced over my shoulder. Oh, and one more thing? Jessica glared. What? I smiled. You're gonna find out just how bad it feels to lose. Then I walked out, slamming the door behind me. But this was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. My body was exhausted, but my mind was sharper than ever. Jessica thought she could walk all over me, humiliate me, and get away with it. Not a chance. I wasn't just going to leave, I was going to make her regret every damn thing she did. By morning, I had a plan. A brutal, precise, and unforgiving plan. First, I called my lawyer. I didn't waste time on emotions, just facts. The recording of her admitting to the affair, the bank statements showing her stealing from me, and evidence of her erratic behavior. My lawyer, Mark, whistled when he heard it all. Daniel, you're sitting on a goldmine. If we play this right, you'll walk away with everything and she'll be left with nothing. I finished for him. That was exactly what I wanted. Next, I made another call, this one to my bank. I froze our joint accounts before she could drain them any further. Let's see how long Ryan sticks around when her money train suddenly runs out of gas. And then I got to work on the final blow. Jessica woke up around noon. Hungover, looking like a mess, she staggered into the kitchen while I sat at the table, sipping coffee. She barely acknowledged me at first, probably still fuming from last night. Then she tried to use her phone. I heard the frustration build with every failed attempt. She cursed under her breath, furiously tapping at the screen. Something wrong? I asked casually. She shot me a glare. My cards aren't working. I shrugged. Weird. Her eyes narrowed. What did you do? I smirked. Oh, nothing. Just made sure you can't steal from me anymore. She lunged toward me, slamming her hands on the table. You had no right. I leaned back, taking another sip of coffee. No, Jessica. You had no right. No right to cheat, no right to lie, and definitely no right to steal from me. She scoffed, crossing her arms. You're pathetic, Daniel. Freezing the accounts? What, you think that's gonna make me come crawling back to you? Newsflash, I don't need you. I smirked. Good. Because soon, you won't have anything. She blinked. For the first time, real fear flickered across her face. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I filed for divorce this morning. And since you're an unfaithful thief, guess what? You're getting nothing. No house. No money. No support. Nothing. Jessica's jaw clenched, but I saw the panic behind her eyes. You can't do that. I chuckled. Oh, but I can. And I already did. She backed away, shaking her head. You're a monster. I laughed. No, Jessica. I'm the consequence. She stormed out of the house, probably to find Ryan and cry about how evil I was. I didn't care. The next step was already in motion. I had hired a private investigator weeks ago, back when I first suspected something was off. And now? Now I had pictures, videos, and proof that Jessica wasn't just sleeping with Ryan, she was funding his entire damn lifestyle. And Ryan? He had a record. Fraud. Theft. Manipulation. He was a con artist, and Jessica had walked right into his trap. I had enough evidence to make sure she didn't just lose the divorce, she'd have to answer for the money she stole, too. She thought she was playing me? She had no idea who she was messing with. That evening, I got a text from Mark. She's screwed. Let's meet tomorrow to finalize everything. Perfect. I was about to pour myself a drink when the door burst open. Jessica stormed in, her face red with rage. What the hell did you do, Daniel? I raised an eyebrow. You'll have to be more specific. She threw her phone on the table. Ryan dumped me. I smirked. Shocking. She was breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists. He said I'm broke, that I can't give him anything anymore. He just walked away. I took a slow sip of my drink. So, let me get this straight, you threw away your marriage, stole from me, and gave everything to a loser, and now that he's gone, you suddenly care? She gritted her teeth. You ruined my life. I set my glass down. No, Jessica. You did that all on your own. She lunged at me, screaming, You think you've won? You think this is over? I caught her wrists, holding her back with ease. She was desperate now, wild, furious, terrified. You're going to regret this, she hissed. I let go of her, stepping back. No, Jessica. You are. She stood there, shaking, breathing hard. For the first time since this started, she realized the truth. She lost. And I had never felt more free. Jessica stood there, her breath ragged, her fists clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. I could see it, the pure, unfiltered rage in her eyes. The realization that she wasn't in control anymore. That for the first time, she was losing. You think you've won? She spat, voice shaking. You think freezing the accounts and sending some papers to your lawyer means I'm just going to roll over and take it? I took a sip of my drink, completely unfazed. I don't think, Jessica. I know. Her nostrils flared. I will fight you on this, Daniel. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I chuckled. No, Jessica. You have no idea what I'm capable of. She scoffed, running a hand through her disheveled hair. Oh, please. You're acting like some mastermind. You're just a bitter, pathetic man who can't handle the fact that I moved on. I smirked. Moved on? You mean throwing yourself at some jobless con artist and paying for his lifestyle? Yeah, real upgrade. Her lips parted, and for a second I saw genuine shock in her expression. She had no idea that I knew everything. That I had proof. I pulled out my phone, scrolling for a second before turning the screen toward her. It was a picture of Ryan, standing outside a luxury hotel, one I had paid for without even realizing it. The second image? Him flirting with another woman. Not Jessica. Someone younger. Prettier. Dumber. Jessica's face drained of color. I let the moment linger before I twisted the knife. Guess what, Jess? He was using you. You were just a walking ATM to him. She lunged, trying to grab the phone, but I was faster. I pulled back, shaking my head. You don't get to erase the truth. Her breathing turned uneven, panic creeping into her voice. You don't know anything. Ryan loves me. He dumped you the second your money ran out. That's not love, sweetheart. That's a transaction. She staggered back, bumping into the table. For the first time, she looked small. Weak. Like the entire world was crashing down on her. Good. She deserved every second of this. But then something changed. Her lips curled into a sneer and her eyes darkened with something else. Desperation. This isn't over, she whispered, her voice eerily calm. I'll take you down with me. I tilted my head, amused. How exactly? She straightened, brushing her hair back, trying to compose herself. Divorce court. I'll tell them you were abusive, controlling. That you, I laughed. Jessica, you really think a judge is going to believe you over cold, hard evidence? Over bank statements? Over a recorded confession of you admitting to the affair? For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. This isn't a game anymore. This is reality. And in reality, you've lost. She swallowed hard. I leaned in just enough to see her flinch. So here's how this is going to go. You're going to sign the divorce papers and you're going to walk away quietly. If you try to fight me, I will bury you in court. You won't just lose the money, I'll make sure everyone sees you for what you really are. Jessica opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because she knew. She was finished. Her breathing was uneven, her body shaking. For a moment, I almost thought she might cry. But instead, she snapped. With a sudden scream, she grabbed the nearest object, a glass from the table, and threw it straight at me. I ducked just in time, the glass shattering against the wall behind me. She was feral now, pure rage consuming every inch of her. I hate you, she shrieked, her voice breaking. I wish I never met you. I took a slow breath, straightening. Finally, some honesty. Her chest rose and fell in quick, erratic movements. She was losing it. Good. Let her drown in her own rage. She stormed past me, grabbing her purse, shoving her feet into her shoes. You'll regret this, Daniel, she spat as she flung the door open. I swear to God, you'll regret every single thing. And just like that, she was gone. I exhaled, letting the silence settle. It was over. Or so I thought. Because the next day, she came back with a vengeance. I thought she was gone for good. That she had finally realized there was nothing left to fight for. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to banging on my door. Not a knock, pounding. I groaned, rubbing my face before dragging myself to the door. When I swung it open, I expected Jessica, screaming, crying, begging, anything but what I saw. 2 police officers. Daniel Carter? One of them asked, stone-faced. I frowned. Yeah? The second officer pulled out a notepad. Sir, we have a report filed against you for domestic abuse. We need you to come with us for questioning. I blinked. What? Jessica. That lying. I forced myself to stay calm. This is a mistake. My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, is making up lies to get back at me. The officer barely reacted. You can explain that down at the station. Please step outside. I laughed. You're serious? Sir, we're not going to ask again. I could argue, resist, but I knew better. I raised my hands. Fine. They cuffed me and led me to the squad car. As I slid into the back seat, my blood boiled. Jessica wanted a war? She just declared it. The interrogation room. I sat across from a detective, arms crossed. Your wife claims you were emotionally manipulative and physically aggressive, he said, studying me. That you threatened her. I smirked. And what evidence does she have? He tapped a file on the table. Her statement. I chuckled. So, just her word? The detective narrowed his eyes. You think that's funny? I leaned forward. What I think is funny is how I have evidence of her cheating, stealing, and lying. Bank records. Phone logs. A recorded confession. His expression shifted. I had him. I pulled out my trump card. I also hired a private investigator weeks ago. Every movement, every lie documented. Silence. Then he exhaled. If what you're saying is true, this will clear up quickly. Damn right it would. 3 hours later, I was free. Jessica's lies? Worthless. She had no proof, no bruises, no hospital records. Just desperation. When I got home, my lawyer was already waiting for me. She tried to ruin you, Mark said, shaking his head. She failed. I cracked my knuckles. She's not done. And I was right. Because that night, she came back. 1 a.m. A car screeched to a halt outside my house. I looked through the window. Jessica, drunk. She staggered out, slamming the door, wobbling toward my house. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the cops, but then I stopped. Let's see what she does. I stepped outside as she reached the porch. Her makeup was smeared, her hair a mess. She reeked of alcohol. You happy? She slurred. You ruined my life. I sighed. Go home, Jessica. She swayed, gripping the railing. I loved you. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Before or after you cheated? Her face twisted. You weren't enough. I chuckled. Ah, there it is. The truth. She wiped her face. I miss you, Danny. I folded my arms. You miss control. You miss money. You don't miss me. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't falling for it. Then she snapped. I hope you die alone, she shrieked, grabbing a bottle from her purse. Glass. Whiskey. She threw it. I dodged. The bottle shattered against the wall. She screamed, kicking the door, clawing at her own face. I pulled out my phone. Jessica, you need help? Screw you. Red and blue lights flashed. The cops. Someone must have called them. She spun, eyes wide, realizing what was happening. Too late. They tackled her, handcuffing her as she screamed and thrashed. I watched, arms crossed, heart steady. This was the end. Jessica was finished. As they shoved her into the squad car, she locked eyes with me, her face twisted in hatred. This isn't over, she mouthed. I smiled. Yes, it is. And with that, they drove her away. For good. Jessica was gone. Arrested. Out of my house. Out of my life. But I knew her. She wasn't the type to go down quietly. And I was right. The next morning, I got a call. She posted bail? Of course she did. I exhaled, gripping my phone tighter. What now? Mark, my lawyer, sighed. She's still a legal liability. Until the divorce is finalized, she could try anything. I knew what that meant. She wasn't done. And I needed to end this first. That afternoon, I went to see her. Not at her apartment. At her mother's house. Jessica was inside, curled up on the couch, still wearing yesterday's mess. She looked ruined. Good. She saw me and sneered. Come to gloat. I smirked. Came to end this. She rolled her eyes. It's already over. I stepped closer, voice cold. Not until you sign. Jessica's jaw clenched. You're disgusting. I shrugged. You're a liar, a cheater, and a criminal. But sure, I'm the bad guy. She didn't answer. I pulled out the divorce papers and dropped them on the table. Sign them. She stared at them, silent. Then she laughed. Laughed. You don't get it, do you? She tilted her head, smiling. This isn't just about money or love or revenge. This is about winning. I raised an eyebrow. And what exactly do you think you're winning, Jess? Her smile faded. You have nothing left. No leverage. No power. No control. I leaned in. The only thing you can do now is walk away with some dignity. Her hands trembled. For a second, I thought she might cry. Then she grabbed the pen. And she signed. No fight. No screaming. No tantrum. Just a single, defeated signature. It was done. I grabbed the papers, turned to leave. But she spoke. Ryan was a mistake. I stopped. I thought he loved me, she whispered. But he just took what he wanted and left. I turned back. Like you did to me? Jessica didn't answer. For the first time, she looked small. Alone. Pathetic. I should have felt pity. I didn't. I just nodded and walked away. And this time? She didn't follow. 1 week later, the divorce was finalized. Jessica tried to fight for money. She got nothing. She tried to take the house. She lost. She even tried to contact me. Blocked. I was free. 3 months later, I saw her again. At a coffee shop. She looked different. Thinner. More tired. She saw me, froze, then quickly turned away. And I smiled. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I won. And she knew it. Jessica was gone from my life. Legally. Financially. Emotionally. But even after everything, I still had one final lesson to learn. Because when you truly move on, it's not just about winning. It's about letting go. 6 months later, life was finally good. The house felt bigger, brighter, mine. No more fights. No more lies. No more Jessica. I had started working out again. Rebuilding myself. Living. Then one night, while scrolling through my phone, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey. I frowned. Who the hell, eh? Then another text. It's me. Jessica. My grip tightened around the phone. She was blocked. She must have used a new number. Then another message. Can we talk? I almost ignored it. Almost. But something inside me, the part of me that needed closure, made me respond. What do you want? Seconds later, she replied. Just 5 minutes. I hesitated. Then, fine. The last meeting. I met her at a small diner on the edge of town. Public, neutral. She was already there, sitting at a booth, stirring a cup of coffee. When I walked in, she looked up. Her eyes were tired. Her face thinner. She smiled weakly. Hey, Danny. I sat down, arms crossed. You got 5 minutes. She swallowed. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I said nothing. She exhaled. I was selfish. Reckless. I took you for granted. And I lost. I nodded. Yeah. You did. She flinched. I deserve that. I studied her. Why now? She sighed. Because I finally get it. I destroyed everything good in my life, and for what? A thrill? Some idiot who didn't even care about me. I leaned back. That's not my problem. She nodded. I know. Silence. Then she wiped her eyes. I miss you. I laughed. Actually laughed. She winced. I'm serious. I shook my head. Jessica, you don't miss me. You miss who you were when you were with me. She blinked. What? You had security. Stability. Someone who gave a damn about you. And you threw it away because you thought the grass was greener. She bit her lip. I was stupid. I smirked. Yeah. You were. She looked down. Do you think we could ever? I cut her off. No. Her shoulders slumped. I leaned forward. You made your choice. I made mine. And mine is never again. A tear slipped down her cheek. But I felt nothing. Jessica wasn't my wife anymore. She was just a lesson. I stood up. Take care, Jessica. She sniffled. You too, Danny. And just like that, I walked away. For the last time. The final reflection. Some betrayals break you. Others build you. Jessica tried to ruin me. She failed. Because I didn't just survive. I won. Not by fighting. Not by getting revenge. But by moving the hell on. And that was the best ending I could have asked for.